All right, so today what I'm going to talk about is sales, onboarding, and retention. These are the three keys to billions. Now, when you're an early stage founder, there's a lot of people, of course, that want to be that unicorn startup. They want to exit. They want to be the next Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or insert rich person that's controversial here. But ultimately, if you can't build a business that works, you just have dreams, not goals. And we need to make these goals tangible and structured and systematized in order to get there. That's where sales, onboarding, and retention comes in to make sure your business actually makes value and consistent value and doesn't lose all that value. And then whether you want to be a 100 millionaire, a 50 millionaire, a 10 millionaire, or you want to be a billionaire, you can set up these structures, processes, systems, the things that are necessary to enable that business. So I want to give a quick lesson here, focusing on things that I would encourage you to consider at the early stage in particular. So first, some quick definitions. Sales, again, we try to keep it really simple, really focused, no fluff. Finding, engaging, nurturing, and closing customers, right? You got to locate them. You got to talk to them or, poke them somehow. You have to nurture them in terms of from that first discussion. Typically, you're not going to close them touch point one. There's going to be a few dialogues. They're going to see an ad or a post. There's going to be some ongoing touch points that allow a little, very small, but relationship to form, right? Some trust to be gained. And then from there, ultimately, of course, you want to close them. This encompasses, and again, you can subdivide this into 100 pieces if you want, but fundamentally, that is the beginning and end of the sales process. But the end of the sales process is not the end of the sale, right? That's just the first piece. The next part is onboarding. And onboarding is what happens right after they sign. It's right after they convert in that instant moment. It's actually getting them onto the system, the platform, getting them to use your product. How many times have you downloaded a piece of software and not actually gotten onto it or gotten to use it because the onboarding was unclear, how to use it was unclear? You had all this excitement, you were willing to close, but ultimately you weren't enabled to actually kind of get this engine moving. You bought a car, you were excited, you turned the engine key, but it didn't start and you didn't know what to do. There wasn't an instruction manual, there wasn't somebody there hand holding you, and ultimately you returned the car. No surprises. And retention. Now let's assume, for the sake of ease, that you sell them, you close them, things are going well, you get them in the car, they turn the car on, they like it, right? You're getting them onboarded into the system. But now it's 30 days later, 60 days later, 100 days later, 2 years later. How are you going about actually keeping them? Because remember, people's memories are short. New products, new focuses, new opportunities, new places to allocate resources, both time and money, are coming about every single day. So if you don't have a way to keep them engaged in your product, keep reminding them of value, keep finding new ways to bring value that evolve with the market, you can't be surprised that you struggle to retain customers that you don't try to keep around. A silly but pretty accurate example of this that I love is there's an old saying of, you should always date your wife, because if you don't, someone else will. And that, I think, is pretty on point for what it means for retention and all things. Again, everything's B2B SaaS, but it's like, yeah, if you don't continue to care about your customer, they're going to leave. How often do people get really upset at phone companies because phone companies give the best deals to new customers and leave all the people that have been there for forever and a half in the dust? And then guess what happens? There's no brand loyalty and they end up swapping so they can get a better deal. This plays out in its own way for your business, whether you're day one or day 1,000. And it's all up to you to kind of navigate those hurdles to obviously increase retention. And a key point on retention, this comes from like a Mad Men episode, which I actually like. Not that you should take everything from there, but the day you start getting customers is the day you start losing them. I like that concept because it kind of makes it it puts the pressure on. But it also kind of pulls the pressure off. It puts the pressure on because it's like, you got them, they're on the line, and they're going to go away someday. But it's not out of your control. you can do things that keep them on the line for longer. But the nice thing is you don't have to operate under the assumption that if they go away, if my customer lifetime value, if the time that they're with me isn't infinite, if it isn't not 1 year, but 5 years, 10 years, it's not worth it. It's like, no. The goal isn't to have a perpetual customer. The goal is simple. If the industry average for your business is to keep customers for 2 years and you keep customers for 2 months, that's a problem. If the industry average is 2 years and you keep them for 2 years, amazing. If it's 2 years and you keep them for 3 years, you are top 1%. So it's not a question of like who's better or worse. It's how good can you make your process? Because ultimately, again, to put it very simply, you can keep it's much easier to keep a customer than it is to get a customer. And if someone sticks around for twice as long, they're basically 2 customers, which sounds, again, it's one of those things you don't think about until you actually start doing the math. And because I'm the finance guy for these businesses, I'm doing the math all day long. And I want us to get all the customers in the world, but I also want to make sure we keep customers because that pays the bills much easier than new customer acquisition costs, et cetera, et cetera. The startup myth: sales fixes everything. Now, this is, again, a plus or minus myth because there's a lot you can do with money, but that's a key point. Money and sales is not cash, and cash is not usage. There are some founders that really focus on sales. More founders often than not are focused on product, like this new feature and that new feature and whatever. And it's like, okay, cool. But when we actually get to selling the product and, trying to make money, there are founders that focus really, really heavily on the close, right? We get the lead, we get to nurture them. I send them the contract. We got the deal. It's $1 million. But again, sales is not the end of the process. It's the beginning. So in order to get the cash from that, you actually have to not only wait the amount of time for them to send the money, but they have to continue to get value. If it's a monthly service, then every month you're basically renewing the value that they see in your organization. The second piece to this is sales and cash aren't usage, meaning I can close $1 million contract. They can send me the first half of the payment, but if nobody uses that software and it's not maintained and engaged with on a regular basis, the next time a budget discussion comes up, the CFO is going to pop up and go, hey, this software, do we use this? What's the usage? Do people like it? Well, we're going to reassess all our software for the year, see what we need to upgrade, see what's kind of bloat and what we can get rid of. And if it's a sales software and you have a 20-person sales team and 2 people use it, it's probably going to get cut, even if it could bring tons of value to the other 18 people. If they don't see it and they're not using it, that's game over. And now a customer that could have been with you for years, right, could have expanded their services, they're gone. And now your brand value's hurt because the next time they go to a conference and someone brings up your software, what are they going to say? Oh yeah, we just actually cut that software out. We weren't really using it. And now you're getting hit on both ends, and that is not a good place to be. Poor onboarding turns sales to ash. Again, if you have a really poor onboarding experience, imagine if you went to the doctors, you picked a doctor, and when they handed you the info paperwork, it wasn't 2 pages, it was 200 pages. Yeah, you're going to leave. You're going to find a new doctor. You're going to make a new appointment, right? Because some onboarding processes are so painful and so annoying. And here's the trick. It doesn't matter if you, as the founder, think it's annoying. It matters if the customer feels it's annoying. And it's up to them to determine what level of annoyance is acceptable. And your goal is really just to kind of continue to poke and prod until eventually you go, this is what they'll tolerate. This is what they want, and this is how we can make it great. And notice, you don't have to start at great. You have to start at what they'll tolerate. You have to start at what can you provide and what can you do so that minimum they don't refund the product. Them keeping it is step 1. Them using it is step 2. So now I want to break down a few different kind of key pieces to each of these things that I would encourage you to keep in mind. And this is one of those: don't get overwhelmed by everything. Pick 1 or 2 or 3 things from each of these buckets and figure out, how does this work for me? Am I covering this? Am I not? Do I need to improve this? Do I even know what half of this means? And do I have to do some Googling after? This is an important piece. It's one of those like, I can spoon feed you the stuff, but I can't chew it for you, right? I knew this guy who used to say, and he was brutal, he was a tutor, he's like, I can only teach it to you, I can't understand it for you. And while that is a bit savage, it's one of those, part of this is, again, I would love to be able to give you every specific answer to your business, but this is very much, I can teach you how to use this wrench, but you have to use it on your equipment. I don't know what your equipment is, or your equipment could be different than what I'm talking about, but the same wrench, I promise you, will work. So first, sales. Know your customer. I shouldn't have to say it, but I do have to say it because a lot of people think they know their customer. They come up with a lot of assumptions, right? And they go like, oh, they're definitely like this and they should be like that. And I know they're like this. And then I ask, how do you know that? And they go, oh, I've been talking to people, casually about this for years. And it's like, okay, well, have you done any like real thorough conversations, or have you had any real thorough conversations on this? Have you read industry reports? Have you checked news headlines? Have you looked at the different segments that exist in your business? Because let's just say, again, you're a B2B software and you help healthcare companies. There's very big differences between really small mom and pop healthcare companies and really large enterprises. And guess what? The knowledge you're going to need about each, whether it's how to close them, where they're at, who to talk to, those are completely different. So this is one of those, do not assume you know your customer, assume that you should know more and more and more. There's a reason these social media sites are so obsessed with every little minor piece of data, because they know every bit of data, if correlated and analyzed properly, can drive a sale. Now, I'm not saying you go crazy and download everybody's personal information, but if you can't tell me demographics, psychographics, geographics, right? If you don't know anything about this customer, it shouldn't be a surprise that your sales process, even if it's working, isn't working half as well or 1/100th as well as it could. Next, we want to track conversions, objections, and pricing sensitivity. And again, you can add more, you can take away, but fundamentally, these are things that at a minimum, I focus on. One, how are our conversions? If we're having, or track our conversations, because the conversations that we have in sales are really going to let us know what the customer is thinking. Ultimately, we're going to track these conversions at the end of the day, but fundamentally, we want to know, what is the customer saying to us? Remember, a pitch is not just you blabbering for 20 minutes trying to tell them how great it is. It's you learning what their problem is and making sure that your solution actually solves the problem. And sometimes by listening to them, you learn a much better way or key vocabulary or unique positioning that totally transforms your ability to connect with your customer. A big thing that I always have my founders focus on is I want to use the customer's language back at them. I want us to go have 50 conversations and write down words that we keep hearing over and over and over again. And this is why it's really important to do these conversations one-on-one, because then you remember it, right? If someone is using the word frustrated and you hear it 6 times, 7 times, 8 times, your ad, when eventually you run an ad for your business, is going to be, are you feeling frustrated? Gotcha. Right? You're using this data. Objections is great because you want to understand what pushback is. Some objections can be really valid, like, oh, that's not a problem for us, or we don't care about that, or we already have a solution. Some of those you're going to have to overcome, or, just come to terms with the fact that you're kind of hitting a wall and maybe this isn't a problem that's worth solving. And just because there's a solution doesn't mean it's worth solving. The customer has to be willing to buy it, use it. There has to be that other side to the equation. So by understanding not only the valid objections, but the invalid, right? Invalid objections are lack of understanding. They're a lack of clarity. They're unease with the product for some reason. It's a lack of information and confidence. It's not them actually having an objection. And part of this is the art and science of learning the difference between the two. And here's the trick. You can't learn it in one conversation. You got to go have a bunch of these conversations, and then you can actually ascertain what's going on. Pricing sensitivity is also important to talk about, for the sole fact that Price is not a scientific number. Price is about optimization, which means charging the highest price you can while still getting every single customer that you can. And if that means you have to charge a price that looks 20% lower than you like, but you get double the amount of customers, I don't have to be a PhD in math to know that there's more money at the end of that one than the first one, right? Sell solutions to problems, not look how cool this is. And this is a big thing for founders. And I get it. You're building something you're passionate about, something that you care about, something that you want to see, in the world in a big way. But the problem is your customer isn't looking at your tool like, oh, isn't this cool? They might think it's cool after, but the reason that they care currently is because it solves a problem or it adds a unique value that isn't being added elsewhere. This is a kind of a critical step in the sales process in terms of making sure you're making the sale about the customer, not about you and not about the product. Because remember, the customer just wants a solution. If it's your product or your solution or you or somebody else, they are totally indifferent. Onboarding. In the early days, I highly, highly, highly recommend doing personal hand-holding onboarding. This is white glove service. This is just making sure they get every single detail. And you do this honestly for two reasons. One, because of course you want to make sure your early customers have a good experience. But more than that, you want to learn what are the friction points? What are the confusion, little areas? What are the things that seem clear to me, but clearly aren't clear to them that I need to improve or adjust? This can be something as simple as, hey, we have icons. I'll give you a perfect example. I was working with a startup and I was doing some, testing with them. They had a bunch of icons on the bottom of their screen for, the different sections you could click, but a few of them I wasn't clear what they meant. So I got kind of confused when I was doing the testing. And then when we went back, they went and adjusted it. And not only did they update the icons to make them more clear, but they added text underneath, which helped drive, oh, this is the home page, this is the search page, this is your favorites page. It made it more clear for the user. Now, if they weren't in the room to explain it to me, I would have found it out. I would have been able to understand myself. And now they were able to save a customer onboarding experience. SOPs and checklists will save your life. This is one of those things that I encourage founders to always have these, but not too early. And what that means is you don't need to have a process if you don't have a process written out, if you don't have a process that's working. I would rather you not write anything down as far as trying things out until you find something that works. And the second something works, you write it down. And the second something works consistently, because sometimes there's a one-off success that isn't representative of the average, then you write it down extra bold and you detail it out. Because at the end of the day, eventually, if the business continues to grow, you're going to want to scale your processes, scale your team. And that means onboarding people and training them on the things that work for your unique business. And if you've never written it down and you're just depending on Susan, well, what happens if she leaves or gets hurt or is on a trip? You're just not able to onboard people. That's not how you run your business. Quick wins, feedback, and fixes in the first 30 days. Now, this seems like a really small thing, but I consider the first 30 days or, whatever your first kind of cycle of value is for the customer, I consider that still a part of onboarding. Because again, we'll just use a super easy example. If I buy a video game and there's a tutorial, and when I'm going through the tutorial, I'm not having any fun, I might refund the video game. Now, it's not that I didn't want the game, and it's not that I didn't want to have fun, but I didn't get that immediate value, which reinforced, oh, this was a good decision. This is what I should have done. I'm glad I did this. So that early stage, I find that the first wins, the things that tell the customer, oh, I made the right decision. This is actually a part of onboarding, because up until that point, they can always pull out or cancel or do this. And yes, you can try and hold them to task because you have some contract signed, but I'll tell you, no customer is going to stick around for a long time if the only reason they're sticking around is because you have something signed. That's not how you keep a customer. That's how you hurt your brand. Retention. Proactive check-ins. Remember, you care a lot about your first customer, but then there's your fifth, and then there's your 10th, and then there's your 30th. And not only are you going to lose touch with them naturally as you get more customers, but as time goes on in their life cycle, the first 30 days, the first 60 days, the first 100 days, you're going to naturally just, your focus will change. This isn't, you have to always have expert level, one-on-one dinners with every client, but you have to make sure that there's a reason that they're sticking around, that they're checking in, that they're seeing value, that you're engaging. And especially in the early years of building your company, you're going to want to remain close, especially to your early customers, to continue to build that brand, extract knowledge, and make the product better. Most companies are still in the MVP stage, even if they have a full product after the first few years, because there's so many unknowns that they learn over time. This is part of the journey and continuing in that conversation. Usage data tracking and pushes. It's really important not only just to see that someone's using your system, but if your system has 10 features, what are the features that they're using? Which are the ones that you thought were valuable, but they're not touching? The ones that seem like little random nice to haves or whatevers that you just said yes because the junior developer thought it would be a good idea and it wasn't going to take too long. And now that's the most clicked button on the website. There's a certain kind of humility to understanding that you can be really confident and also really wrong, and that's okay. I'd rather be really focused on learning and understanding, and then no matter what, I'm right. Because as long as I'm learning and as long as I'm getting better, I'm right. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm right in my path. I'm not right in my, singular decision on a specific thing. Gathering testimonials and a ton of case studies. Nothing speaks louder than your current customers to your future customers. The easiest example of this is, how many times do you go to a website and before you buy, you scroll down and you see the reviews, you see the video testimonials, you see the quotes, you see the 5 stars, you see the proof of value. We help customers double sales. We help them save money on this. We help them achieve this goal in their life. It doesn't matter what it is. It just matters that other customers care and that this shows engagement. It shows proof. It shows value. It shows there's a reason that they should gamble, whether it's $50 or $5,000 on your service. And in the early days, again, you're going to have to build that relationship one-on-one with a great many customers and kind of offer them good deals, offer them freemium services or free to paid type arrangements. But eventually you want to start acquiring anybody and everybody that's relevant to your space. And a more efficient way to build that trust instead of having 20 conversations could be showing them 10 quotes on your website and 2 case studies that are relevant to them that they can access at any time. And now effectively they're selling themselves. And now you just get to kind of continue the dialogue through the sale. The metrics that prove it's working. So for sales, again, you can track 1,000 different metrics if you want, but if you're not tracking these, then you're going to run into some problems. 1, conversion rates. Whether it's the top of the funnel and how many people are going, how you're getting prospects. We're getting 10,000 prospects a month. We're getting 10 prospects a month, right? Okay, I want to increase that, right? Or I want to improve the efficiency of that, right? Whether it's, hey, we spent $10 and got 10, and this month we spent $10 and got 1,000. Great, we drove efficiency. Now what happens if I give you even more money? Sales cycle length is really helpful because obviously the better you are at selling, then the shorter your sales cycle will be. And this is one of those, you don't want to make it any shorter than is appropriate. If it really takes a customer a month to get comfortable with your product, I don't try and force them to get comfortable in a day. That doesn't feel worth the squeeze because a month is plenty short for any product. Again, I tend to think more B2B, but it works B2C as well. However, if the product, sales cycle is 6 months, industry average, and yours is 8 months, well, that's a problem. And if you notice, hey, it was 2 months in Q1, but now our sales cycle length is 4 months in Q2. What's going on? You want to make sure that you have a pulse on your business and how people and how processes are performing. Because it could be that what worked in Q1 just isn't working the same in Q2 because of changes in the market, changes in the preference, changes with certain buckets of customers. All of these things are designed to give you little flags, not that they tell you the answer, but that they give you a place to go looking. And last, price sensitivity. I want to know, obviously, the more we're able to charge and the least price sensitive customers are, meaning, hey, we get 1,000 customers if I charge 50, and hey, if I charge 100, we still get 1,000. And if I charge 150, I get 950. It's like, okay, we're still doing good because I'm able to still maximize this revenue. And a key point here, this is not about being super greedy capitalist where it's like squeeze every penny, even if we only have 2 customers and we make $1 billion. Because there is such a thing as customer concentration, where you want to make sure you have a diversity of customers. That way, if 1 or 2 go away, your business doesn't collapse. But more than that, you're building your product to actually bring value to people. You should probably want to put it in as many hands as possible. Now, this doesn't mean you give it away for free because then you're out of business, but it means you find this middle ground where you can make enough to really justify scaling and growing. And in startup land today, profitability is infinitely easier than it was before due to the decreasing costs of infrastructure. So pursuing this is a really good goal, and it could not be easier than it's never been easier than it is in today's market. Let's put it like that. Onboarding, activation rate, time to value, and setup completion. Activation rate, how many people are actually getting on the system and how quick are they getting on? Time to value, how long until that first win, right? If your system is supposed to give them an alert every time X thing happens, how long after, until, like, let's say they're onboarded on a Monday, how long until they get that first alert, which shows them there's value? If it's a week, great. But if it's a month, maybe there need to be new check-ins, new bits of value, ways that you can continue to sell them. Because remember, you know that value is going to hit at the end of the month, but they don't know that day 7, 8, 9, and their boss asks them a question on day 10 about it, and they're like, I don't know. And now it's day 16, 18, 20, and it's like the value's coming, the value's coming. But then on day 28, they pull out of the contract because it doesn't look like this is working for us. And it was right there. But you didn't set the expectation, you didn't measure it out, you didn't cater to them and what they were needing. And this is part of the process. And setup completion. How many times do customers, all you have to do is upload your files and do this and do that. It's only 4 steps, and they only do 3 of them. And now they're just kind of stuck in this limbo. This is an important piece because you want to make sure people are actually getting onboarded. They're getting activated. They're not just signing the contract, sending you the money, getting 3/4 of the way done, and then boom, it's delayed. There's a part of the process where you got to finish the painting, right? To get on to the next one. We have to finish this onboarding. Onboarding should be as quick, efficient, and user-friendly as it can be, so that way you can get to the part where you keep the customer in retention by continuing to provide that value. And retention, nothing surprising here. Churn rate, how often are you losing customers? And you can calculate this in various ways: per month, per week, per year, percentages, units. Again, it's all relative to your business, but are you losing customers? And if so, how many, how often? Lifetime value, this is a combination of not only how many, let's just use easy numbers, how many months they're with you. So if they're with you for 12 months and they pay you $10 a month, they have an LTV of 120. Pretty simple. If you see that LTV is going up, that would mean, hey, either we're charging more or they're sticking around for longer. I wonder which it is. Let's go dig. Let's go learn. Because if you notice they're sticking around for longer, then it's a question, they're really liking this value. So clearly our value must be good. I wonder if we can charge the next customer a little bit more because we think a little bit more is actually fair, And now you charge that customer 20% more, and you notice that they only stick around for half as long. It's like, ooh, so these people are way more price sensitive than we thought. It looks like there's a sweet spot where if we go $20 too high and all of a sudden we lose the customer, $20 lower, and we seem to keep them forever. You can't know this preemptively. You have to do the tests and learn the things, and then you can plan for this. and net revenue retention. And you can Google, there's a whole formula, but fundamentally it's how much revenue do you retain 1 month to the next from a customer. So if a customer's spending 10 grand, when you look at the upsells and the discounts and the bargains and expansions of what they're doing, you're getting 10,000 1 month, you're getting 12,000 the next, you're getting 8,000 the month after that. You're seeing what's going on with this revenue retention. And it applies to kind of customers as a whole and also individual customers, especially if your business works in smaller units. You know, you have hundreds or thousands of customers. You can really dig into what is the actual net revenue retention for each one. If you're dealing in the millions, this is where you start to look at more cohorts or subsegments of your audience and analyzing them. And that's really it. And again, there's way more you can do. And obviously each of these have their own subsets. But what I wanted to encourage you is to think through not just the beginning of the sale, but what it takes to actually get to the end of the sale, including onboarding and actually keeping that customer so that you can keep that value, keep making money, and of course, keep growing your business.